Hello, and welcome back to 50 States, 50 Murders, the podcast taking you, the listener, on an auditory road trip across all 50 states while we discuss 50 different murders. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 20. Dakota, episode 20, where we're going to be traveling to today.
We're traveling to Pierpont, New York to look at the murder of Ryan Rivers.
This week, we are going to be departing from DeKalb County, Georgia. And as you mentioned, we are going to be heading to Pierpont, New York. DeKalb County, Georgia to Pierpont, New York makes for a 16-hour, 1,100-mile fictitious drive. And we will be discussing the case of Ryan Rivers. No recommendations this week on the TikTok, unfortunately, but we are going to be doing New York. I was just in New York not that long ago. Apologies for the long break in between, but we're happy to be back. As we always do before jumping into this week's case, let's learn a little bit more about the state we're going to be visiting, as well as some notorious murderers from the state of New York. New York is nicknamed the Empire State. This nickname dates back to 1785. Thought this was kind of cool. President George Washington wrote in a letter expressing his admiration for the strength of New York during the American Revolution. He described New York as the seat of the empire. And from that, New York had become and since remains the Empire State. Quick side note, I thought it was worth mentioning New York City has some really solid nicknames as well that I thought had to mention here. It's recognized as the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps, and Gotham. So I really like those. Some really cool nicknames that we're getting this week for the
Man,
state of New
I
York.
don't know if you've seen the fantasy football TikToks about Gotham. Gotham
Mm-mm.
is relying on one man, and it's them down like by 200 points, and they have one player left.
Yeah, I have seen those. Yeah, those are pretty good. Uh, as far as the state flags, well, as always, we'll throw these on the TikTok. You know, I'll say one thing I've realized since we've started doing this project. I guess I've never really. I thought I knew all the state flags, and then sometimes I see a flag and I'm like, yeah, I've never seen that before, and this is one of them. It's a brand new flag to me. I like to leave it up to you as far as how we feel as a core when it comes to the state flag. So, as you're looking at this, tell me a little bit about what we're looking at, and what do you think?
Okay, their flag and seal are the same exact thing. It's interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like you lose points if your flag is just the state seal slapped on a flag. I don't know. I don't like it, but
oh, is that Lady Liberty on both sides? Okay.
yeah. So their state seal it reads Excelsior.
It's not bad.
Uh, yeah. I mean, I know you speak Latin. That means ever upward. Yeah.
That
So
word just reminds me of Silver Linings Playbook because they mentioned that a lot in there.
okay. I was kind of getting like some Harry Potter vibes. Feels like you're throwing a spell out there or something. I don't know. So yeah, state flag. We'll throw that on the TikTok. Murder per capita. Now this one kind of threw me off. Uh, we might have to start fact checking Wikipedia because New York is coming in at 34 out of all 50 states for murder per capita, 4.8 murders per 100K. I was really thinking like New York was going to be top five, top 10. So to see 34 kind of surprised me on this one. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't. There's not many cities. I mean, Queens. Not many cities that are really bad up there.
Okay.
So I can see this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So surprisingly, not the most dangerous place to live. Geographic location, as we depart the southeastern location of the United States, New York is going to be the second state that we cover in the northeastern region. New York is above Pennsylvania and New Jersey, below Canada, and to the right is Vermont, Massachusetts, and Connecticut.
In some parts of it, like Buffalo, are considered Canada.
Yeah, for the most part, Buffalo is kind of treated like Canada. They have a big following, like the Buffalo Bills football team, big following in Canada. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair for sure. How about some random New York facts before we jump into places to see, things to do? The first pizzeria in the United States was actually opened in the state of New York. So I think there's several different cities in the United States that kind of claim they have the best pizza. You got the Chicago deep dish, the Detroit deep dish has kind of been making some noise lately. LA will claim they have a good sliced pizza, but New York, the New York slice, that's always recognized as one of the top slices in America. And the first pizzeria opened in New York dates back to 1905. Since then, as of today, there are over 1,600 different pizza shops located across the five boroughs in New York City. So there's a slice of pizza. And Dakota, we're talking New York City. Real quick, are you able to name all five boroughs?
No,
Not even
but
gonna take a stab at it.
that's a lot of pizza shops.
All right. Well, we got Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. That's gonna make up your five boroughs of New York City. Lots of different pizza shops. Have you? I know you've never been to New York, but do you like New York style pizza?
I'm really a dumbass when it comes to like I know um deep dish style pizza, but
Sure.
I don't know all of the differences. We got
Okay.
into this discussion at work once and
Okay.
everyone's just talking. I'm like, I didn't know there were this many styles of pizza. There's over 10 in America alone, different styles of pizza. And I
Yeah.
thought there was like three.
Okay. In New York, it's more of like it's like a big slice. It's almost like I feel like they specialize more in slices than they do like an entire pizza. And
Actually, you know what? I know this because of Jay lives
okay.
in Brooklyn. He always talks about New York style pizza, how it's real thin.
Yeah.
You gotta
Yep.
fold your pizza, and I'm like,
Yep.
dude, there ain't no pizza on folding. And he thought it was weird that there's no pizza here that you gotta fold to eat.
Yeah, it's like a floppy
Hmm.
floppy pizza. Yeah. All right. So some more interesting facts about New York. There are more than 800 different languages spoken in the state of New York. And this is large part because 37% of New York's population come from an entirely different country. And right there, a little picture of a potential person who's from a different country.
Yeah.
And last random fact for you: while it's widely ignored, honking your horn in the state of New York is actually against the law. The only time you can legally honk your horn in the state of New York is in emergency situations.
Okay. This was actually a discussion today at work. Are you a honker?
I'm not. I'm
Okay.
not a fan of honking. Even if I'm sitting behind someone for like 10 seconds, probably just gonna chill out personally. What about you though? You a honker?
No. So the first two cars I owned didn't even have a horn that worked. So I didn't get used to using the horn. And actually, in the Camaro I've had since 2016, I've maybe like five times I've actually like honked my horn, maybe once or twice laid on it. And that was people that were literally about to hit me. So,
Okay, okay. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll use my horn if I'm like passing by somebody. I'm like, hey, what's up? Doo doo. But other than that, like, yeah, I just kind of chill out on it. Not a fan personally. All right. So every week we do places to see, things to do. And I got to say, I don't know if New York was extremely easy or extremely tough. And the reason I say that, I feel like there's a ton of things to do and see, but I also feel like there's a ton of things to do and see in just New York City. So I feel like we could have had two different episodes. You could have done the state of New York and then the city of New York City itself, because it's just like its own thing. So most of my things, like for example, last episode in the state of Georgia, first thing I mentioned was just a day in the city of Atlanta. A couple different things to do, and it's kind of how I'm going to kick this off here. I got a lot of different things in New York City as far as things to check out. So I already mentioned grab your slice of New York style pizza while you check these all out. And gonna kind of start off on a somber note, but I feel like, at least for me personally, this is my top thing that I want to see if I went to New York, and that's the 9/11 memorial. I just, it's a significant part of our history. It's something that happened while we were present, and we can recall the day it happened. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, uh, 9/11 terrorist attacks hitting the Twin City Towers collapsed, and basically it changed the landscape of New York City as well as our everyday lives. And now there's Ground Zero, where there's some memorials that you can check out. Um, I feel like this is something that you would like if you were there. I mean, what do you think? You want to check
Yeah.
this out someday?
So the only reason I would ever go to New York City is to see Ground Zero.
Okay.
Um, it was a huge moment for all of us. That day was so I used to. I mean, I still have crazy anxiety, but it used to be so bad I would be sent home from school every day. So that was like
Nice.
second, third week of school. I was doing like half days at school because I was just so much anxiety. My parents didn't get me checked out for a while, but I got sent home that morning before any of this happened. So
Okay. Nice.
when I got checked out, or when I went to a nurse, um, called my parents. My dad came, got me. On the way out, we saw the nurse crying. We're like, what the hell? And she like mentioned something to dad, and we like rushed home. And the first tower got hit. So we had the TV on. I got to see the second tower get hit. So that was pretty damn traumatizing as a like
Right.
9, 10 year old. Yeah, and I got to see that whole thing unfold. So yeah, Ground
Okay.
Zero is definitely a place I would want to go.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Something I actually just learned about a week or two ago. I didn't realize how deep that the memorial was, because remember that guy that like jumped into it a couple days
Dude,
ago?
how the hell?
That was
Yeah,
crazy. I had no idea that it was like, I think they said it was 40 feet.
yeah, he just jumped down there and just walking around.
Yeah. So I had no clue it was that deep. I don't know how he was cool to just get up and walk around. I don't know how he got out of there. So I mean, I imagine they had to rescue him or
Yeah,
do something to
for
get him out of
sure.
there. So yeah, 9/11 memorial to kind of kick us off. But besides that, I mean, Times Square is a must see if you're in New York City. I think for me personally, it's kind of like it's one of those things where I think you check it out just to say that you've done it, kind of check it off your list. It's like a modern day urban circus. I mean, you got your bright neon lights, the loud sounds, you got street performers, food vendors, um, advertisements everywhere you look. Just looks crazy. I mean, yeah, I've never been there, but obviously I've seen pictures. So I think Times Square could be okay. I'm not really into like big crowds, so I would never want to do Times Square like on New Year's Eve. I think that is wild that people do that. But I think if you are there, you got to check out Times Square.
Yeah, I have no interest in Times Square really. As you said, way too many people, especially on New Year's Eve. That's something I will never do.
Now, they always say that the easiest way to spot a tourist in a new city is to look around and see who's looking up. So the people that are essentially breaking their necks, like in all the skyscrapers, like those are your tourists. So in New York City, I think I would be super easy to spot, because New York City has a really big list of large buildings. I was doing some research regarding the tallest buildings in the world, and the new Trade Center, the One World Trade Center, it's the seventh tallest building in the world, and it is the tallest building in America, and it's at 1,776 feet. I don't know if that's intentional. I would have to assume it is 1776, right?
Sure.
Can't be a coincidence. So that's in New York City. Central Park Tower is the 15th largest building in the world, second largest building in America at 1,500 feet. You have the 111 West 57th Street. That's the 29th largest, fourth in America. one Vanderbilt, that's the 30th largest building in the world, fifth in America. And rounding that out, I have 432 Park Avenue, 31st largest building, sixth largest in America. So, New York City, if you're walking around, there's just a lot of skyscrapers, but you get to see some of the tallest buildings in the world. So, I think that would be really awesome to see. And it doesn't count as far as tallest buildings because it's a statue, but obviously we got to include Statue of Liberty as a must see when you're in New York City. The statue given to a USA from France. It was a gift to symbolize our freedom. And I feel like at this point, the statue is just symbolic to our nation as a whole. What any interest in Statue of Liberty for you?
No, not really. It is
No.
crazy looking at this list. The Empire State Building's not even in the top five anymore.
Yeah, Empire
Well, it used to
State.
be the tallest building in the world
It
at one
is.
point.
It was like top 50, but yeah, there's a lot of buildings that have taken over. Statue of Liberty. I wonder if that's I mentioned Mount Rushmore when we did South Dakota. Just kind of one of those things where I feel like if you see it on TV enough times, it doesn't seem necessary. But then I really did see it and it was really cool. I kind of feel like it's the same thing. I don't know. I kind of get that same vibe. I feel like I've seen it a million times on TV and pictures, but I'm sure it is probably really sweet in real life.
I don't think you can even go in it anymore. That'd be the coolest part.
Mm, okay. So, as far as New York City goes, lastly, for me, I have Central Park. Central Park is an urban park situated right dead smack in the middle of Manhattan. It's 843 acres, which makes it USA's most visited urban park. Central Park gets an estimated 42 million visitors a year. And within Central Park, there are many things to do. There's theaters, carousels, reservoirs, lakes. There's a Central Park mall, a Central Park zoo, and then much more on top of that. So threw a couple photos in there. Um, Central Park, you think that'd be kind of cool?
I think it'd be all right. The
Okay.
the zoo has their own TV show on
Really?
Animal Planet. Yep.
Okay. I did not know that. I know. I just think it's cool that you have a city. It's like just big business. It's just covered with businesses and uh, buildings, and then just dead smack, you have like this perfect rectangle just laid out for this big park and in the middle of it. So it's just the layout itself is pretty cool. So this is kind of going back to where I said it was New York was really easy, really tough. If you were to leave the city limits, about just a very few amount of things to do in New York City outside of in New York, but outside of the city. First up, I have Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame. Cooperstown is home of the Baseball Hall of Fame and museum. And anything sports related, I feel like is cool to check out. But for me, I feel like baseball kind of has a strange way of picking and choosing who is in and out. I feel like they've left their best players out due to some alleged asterisk steroid allegations. So I feel like that definitely taints the Hall of Fame for me personally. You can't have like your best players not in it, but I'm sure it would still be a cool thing to check out regardless. I mean, how you feel about the Hall of Fame? You would you want to check that out someday?
This is very low on the list of sports Hall of Fames I would want to see.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know we're not huge baseball guys, but Barry Bonds has got to be in the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, as
Yeah,
far as being
put him and Pete in there.
Pete's got to be in it. He's the greatest hitter. Barry Bonds is one of the greatest power hitters. I mean, it's just weird that they're left out, regardless of the things that they may or may not have done. Uh, Either way, though, I still think Baseball Hall of Fame could be cool. Cooperstown's a pretty cool town in itself. Lots of things to do around the Hall of Fame. And last thing here, Halloween is soon approaching. I think Halloween for me is personally my favorite holiday. Dakota, you got a favorite holiday?
It's between that and Thanksgiving. I love
Okay.
Halloween. I love dressing up,
Okay.
all the scary shit. I love the time
Okay.
of the year.
Well, to go along with the season and to tie in the state of New York, I have a weekend trip to Sleepy Hollow, New York. So in this location, you still get the beauty of the northeastern autumns, the leaves, the trees, and then you get the scary, creepy vibes that come along from this haunted town. So, for those who don't know, Sleepy Hollow is the birthplace of the legend of the Headless Horseman. This town goes all in every single year for Halloween, hosting hayrides, parades, festivals, and there's a lot of cool things to do within the city limits. Well, I guess I would say it's a town or a village more so, but in Sleepy Hollow, you can take a tour of the Lyndhurst Castle through a photo in there. And in the evenings of October, you can actually take a candlelight tour through this castle. Looks pretty cool. It's kind of got like that gothic feel, medieval gothic type of feel. And this castle was used in the television series of Dark Shadows. Have you ever heard of this show?
No.
It's a vampire soap opera. I feel like
Oh, I will never watch that.
I feel like your mom would definitely have been someone who'd watch this show. My wife
She
likes vampires, so maybe my wife's seen it potentially.
she probably has. I know my mom's watched Sleepy Hollow, the movie.
Okay. Okay. So also within Sleepy Hollow, there is the Rockefeller State Park Reserve. Plenty of trails for hiking, jogging, bird watching, and fishing. You can take a lantern tour through the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And lastly, there is the Old Dutch Church of Sleepy Hollow. This is a stone church connected to the graveyard where you can learn more about the tale of the Headless Horseman here and get a tour of the building as well. So I think if you're looking for something to do in New York, but you're looking away from the hustle and bustle of the big city, maybe you want to celebrate Halloween a little differently this year, Sleepy Hollow would make for an awesome way to check off all those boxes. So let's switch gears here. Let's take a second to learn about some famous murderers that happen to do their work in the state of New York. Dakota, go ahead and kick us off. Who do we got for famous murderers in the state of New York?
I'm going to start off with the most famous child murderer in our country's history. It has to be Eric Smith. Most people remember the picture of the nerdy little redhead boy, the huge glasses sitting in
Yep.
the courtroom.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
For those who don't know, he was a 13-year-old when he was riding his bike to summer camp and he spotted a 4-year-old Derek Roby heading to the same place. He lured him into the woods where he killed him with a rock and then sexually abused his corpse with a stick. A very brutal crime for a child to commit. Now, despite this, Smith was released from prison last year, spent 27 years inside, and now is a free man.
Wow. Yeah, that kid, just no offense to the kid, but man, he didn't have a chance. He just looked super creepy as a child. He he
It's
he looked like someone who was going to eventually be a killer. So I think he just kind of got it out of the way quick. Just did what he
even
was.
worse as an adult.
Yeah,
He
he's
looks
looking
super creepy now.
super creepy now for sure. So he is out. What do you think? You think they have a chance to come out new, or do you think they'll always be like dangerous?
Something like that. I don't know. It's such a young age.
You think they could
I
be
can't imagine
rehabilitated?
being. I guess it's possible, but I mean, I can't imagine being 13, was a freshman in high school and doing that to a little boy.
Not even, honestly, but yeah, that's crazy. All right. We got a good one next up. Who's next?
Next is the most famous murderer in New York's history. It's David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam. This was a nickname that he gave himself while sending letters to police during his crime spree in 1976 and 1977. He targeted women that were with their boyfriends and would just come up to them and shoot them with a revolver and walk away. He ended up killing 6 and wounded 11. All but one of his instances was a lone victim before he ended up getting caught.
Okay, now wait, did he kill both the girl and the boyfriend, or did he just kill the chick in front of the boyfriend and walk away?
He would shoot them both,
Okay,
but
okay.
he would target. I think it was he had a specific style. I think it was like brunette women. I don't know what that stems from. I mean, that's usually a pattern with serial killers that target women. They have a style that they go after, a type.
Okay. Interesting. Son of Sam. All right. And then we it looks like we have one more for the state of New York.
Yeah, the latest of serial killers to be caught took place in Long Island, New York in July. Rex Howerman is suspected of being the Gilgo Beach serial killer. Bodies of sex workers started showing up in Gilgo Beach in 2010. They just kept coming. 11 in total over a course of a year. And the break in this case came when a witness identified Howerman's Colorado Avalanche as the car linked to one of the killings. He was found to be in contact via email with at least three of the victims, and search history included a lot of searches about the murders. Now, this case is still in court, making it the first active case that we have talked about. So active as I found an article popped up earlier, 4 o'clock. He has been linked to two more murders.
Okay.
So his count just keeps going higher. That's crazy you hear about this back in July because it was also all over TikTok because they raided his house like in broad daylight and there's like hundreds of people outside recording, making TikTok videos of standing outside the house while they raided him.
Hmm. Okay. I'll have to check that out. All right. So that's our three serial killers from the state of New York. And then to close things out, we always have our case of the week. So I'm going to throw it back to you and let you continue on. We have the case of Ryan Rivers. So let's go ahead and jump into it.
Now, this week's story is going to be a little different from our previous ones, as we'll start with a murder and then we'll just look into the life of someone who's had death follow them everywhere. Our case starts at the household of Rick and Lena Gollinger on November 28, 2006. Their 2-year grandson by the name of Ryan Rivers was found drowned in a bathtub by his mother, Connie. Connie had been looking for him around the house, and after searching multiple rooms, stumbled upon the bathroom. On the way to the bathroom, Connie passed the other occupant of the house, Shirley Winters, an acquaintance of Rick and Lena, who rushed past her in the hallway.
Ryan was a boy who hated taking baths, so he would never willingly get into the bathtub. Immediately, it was known that Shirley must have done something to the boy. An autopsy confirmed that it was no accident, as his lungs were filled despite only being in a little bit of water. He also had bruising on his temple. In his body were also traces of rubbing alcohol and isopropyl, another type of alcohol. Shirley was arrested on the suspicion of murder of Ryan Rivers. During the trial, however, is when the past of Shirley came to light as investigators dug into her past. And as you'll see, I mean that quite literally. We're going to start through the top in the life of Miss Winters.
February 27th, 1958, Shirley Barron was born. South Anagda Daga. I don't know. That's weird.
Good enough.
Weird city name. It was a small town, less than 10,000 at the time. She was the third child of Marilyn Barron, who would go on to have a total of 6 children. At a very young age, Shirley's life was struck with tragedy and may have altered the course of her life along with a lot of other lives. Carbon monoxide leak took the lives of 3 of her siblings, Peter, age 11, Joyce, age 9, and Lita, age 4. The only survivor was Marilyn, her mother. Shirley was not home at the time as she was with her grandmother, saving her life and leaving her as the only child. It was suspected that a pipe was damaged from the family's dog, leading to the leak.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the dog must have chewed on like a gas pipe or something. And just, wow. I could totally see how something like that could really set the stage for a pretty screwed up future as an adult. Definitely. So Shirley went on to marry Ronald Winters in 1977 at the age of 18 and had 3 kids with him. It wasn't long before tragedy struck her life as a fire broke out in their house in 1979, killing her 2 children while she was personally able to escape. This cause was something being left too close to the stove. Okay, so she loses her siblings to a pipe burst from the dog, and then she becomes an adult and she loses her children thanks to a house fire. Again, just continuing to set the stage for some really screwed up, just some wild trauma for sure.
Yeah, so you mentioned the 3 kids. At the time, she only had 2, so it killed both of her children at the time. Now, 3 days before the fire at the Winters, a fire broke out 50 miles away, resulting in the death of 3 children whose mother was a close friend of Shirley Winters. We're starting to sense a pattern in this case. The loss of two children caused Shirley and Ron to separate, but not before he could get her pregnant one last time before separating. On November 21st, 1980, worth noting it was Marilyn's birthday, it was Shirley's mother. Her 5-month-old son, Ronald Winter Jr., died in her trailer. The cause was a sudden infant death syndrome. And I don't know if you've ever heard of
Oh, SIDS.
SIDS. My first time ever hearing about it, it's where kids under 1 just die for no reason. I've never heard of this. That's pretty wild, though.
Yes, SIDS. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. It's just kind of happens. And just no one really understands it. It's pretty scary. And I also feel like if you are a person who has murderous intentions, I feel like it'd be really easy to be like, "Oh, my kid had SIDS." You know what I mean?
Maybe that's how so many of these killer mothers that we've talked about have gotten away with it, even
Yeah,
though
I
it
feel like
hasn't been mentioned in any other case.
yeah, I just feel like it'd be really easy to use as a thing to use to get away with. So I don't know. Interesting, but yeah, wow. Lots of tragedy following a old girl around. So in the years of 1981 and 1982, 5 separate fires brought out the fire department to Shirley Winters' trailer home. Okay, before I even go on, very, very odd. I mean, knock on wood, 32 years old, I've never once had the fire department come to my house. So the fact that the fire department's coming out to your trailer 5 times in 2 years, I'd say that's pretty weird.
For sure.
So naturally, they started to get suspicious. And eventually, this led to her being charged with arson on her own home. Shirley and Ronald rekindled their relationship and would go on to have 3 more children after already losing 3. They had 2 daughters, Ashley and Joy, and a son, Clayton. The marriage wouldn't last, unfortunately, and the two divorced in 1989, resulting in her taking the kids and moving to Syracuse.
This is where she yet again was charged with arson, and this wouldn't be the
Oh,
last. Took 2 more arson charges for her kids to finally be removed from her custody. Then 4 more fires happened, but she was still not sitting in jail. Final straw came in 1997 when she set her mother's house on fire,
oh,
admitting to knowing that her cousin was inside at the time. And for this, she was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but released on parole in 2004. It didn't last long as she was arrested again for violating her terms. I'd like to throw a question out to you. What do you think
hmm.
violated her parole terms?
I mean, there's no way that it could be arson. That just would be too obvious, right?
No, it wasn't arson, but it was
Oh,
close. She was caught with a lighter on her, which was
oh, okay,
against
okay.
her parole.
So no matches, no lighter, nothing of that extent.
Yeah,
Okay, I gotcha.
nothing that can cause another fire.
Okay,
So this landed her in another year, completing the 8 years that she was originally given.
this is where our case ends up, where it began, with the death of Ryan Rivers and Shirley Winters in police custody. This is where the digging begins. All of the prior charges raised some serious suspicions from someone who had been surrounded by death. The bodies of her first 2 children were dug up in 2007, 27 years after the fire that killed them, and it was found that they had suffered head trauma before dying in the fire. This, however, was not enough to convict Shirley of murder. It was, however, found that her 5-month-old did not die of SIDS, but Shirley had smothered him to death. Okay. Interesting how our little conversation can come back to that. So that's exactly what did happen. She used that SIDS as a get out of free jail card, get out of jail free
Mm-hmm.
card. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
And if she wouldn't have killed again, she would have gotten away with it.
Hmm.
Wild. So she pled guilty in court to manslaughter in the death of Ryan, which is very strange, and the murder of Ronald III, and she was sentenced to 28 to 45 years in prison where she is today. I did stumble across some strange findings after this case in an event that happened more recently. When researching the grandparents of Ryan, as I said in the very first part of this, Ryan and Lena Gollinger, their obituary was the first thing to pop up. And I say there because it was a joint one. In 2021, the same house where Ryan died burned to the ground, killing both of them.
Wow. Maybe the family is just cursed of some, it's just a curse of the family. It's something like that. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and she was in jail at the time, so she couldn't have done it.
Yeah. So it wasn't her this time around. Wow. For someone like that, I mean, do you think people are just naturally born killers? Like, you think there's just something in them that leads them to be that way?
Natural
Or
born killers.
do you think it could be
Yeah.
like, could we blame the dog? The dog ate the gas pipe, blew up the house, seeing your siblings die in a house fire. I mean, maybe that really ignited everything. Full pun.
Man, the way this story was going, I was expecting them to come back years later and say it wasn't the dog. It was actually Shirley.
Hey, maybe it was. Honestly.
I there are a lot of times where trauma causes these people to act out and commit murder, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tough to say.
Hmm. Well, that is very interesting. I feel like every time we have a case like this, it just fascinates me, some of the things that transpired that allowed the future things to happen, like all these deaths that took place, and her and her husband split, but she got custody of the kids. I feel like she probably should have never had custody to begin with. How bad was this dude that she's the one getting custody? I mean, that's just crazy to begin with. Death follows this person, and yet she's still allowed to have the children in her custody for all that time. So very interesting. That was a great case. I like that one. To close this out, we had the state of New York. We spent a lot of time discussing New York City in itself. And outside of that, we had the Cooperstown Baseball of Fame. Halloween is soon approaching us. So we just quickly dove into the town of Sleepy Hollow, which I think would be really awesome. We had our case of the week as well as three notable cases. Dakota, I want to throw it back to you. I always like to have you rank the state that we discussed on your list to kind of close us out. So, is there anything that I missed? Anything that you would personally really like to see in New York? And ultimately, where are you going to put New York on your list?
I think I kind of mentioned that I have no interest in going to New York. Ground Zero would be number one, but I don't know if that's enough for me to make the trip up there. I've heard good things about New York. I know a couple people that love it there, and they would go all the time if they could. But for me, it's not very high on my list. I'm gonna put it somewhere in the middle. I'm gonna put it number 30.
Number 30 for New York. Okay. Not bad. I get it. You're not a big city guy, not big crowd guy. I feel like that's what New
No,
York is. It's gonna be a lot of crowds, a lot of crazy things going on, hustle and bustle. So I get it. I've been in New York twice, but I've never been in New York City. Again, I kind of feel like it's its own entity other than the state itself. So last time I went up there, we went through Buffalo, which was pretty cool. It has like a small town vibe to it, even though it's got a football team. That was kind of cool. But anyways, it was good to get back on here. Apologies for the 2 week absence. Glad that we can get back on here and put out some content. And it sounds like, without giving too much away, sounds like we got a really awesome episode coming next week. So I'm pretty excited for it. As we begin our departure from the state of New York and conclusion of episode 20 of 50 States, 50 Murders, 20 episodes in, we want to continue to thank you, the listeners, for tuning in each and every week as we continue to cover a new state as well as a murder case that took place there.
if you've not already, please be sure to follow and subscribe, and tune in next week for a nice little Halloween special for episode 21.